As an orthopedic surgeon who has performed hip replacements on over 14,000 seniors in the past 23 years, what the narrator needs to tell viewers today contradicts everything the fitness industry has been selling. Walking, yoga, and swimming that people have been told will protect their hips are not enough after age 65. In the narrator's surgical practice, patients arrive every single week who walked 5 miles daily, practiced yoga religiously, and still ended up with hip joints so deteriorated that the ball of the femur had worn through the socket, creating bone-on-bone grinding so severe they could not sleep through the night. The global hip replacement industry is worth over $47 billion annually, and these companies profit every time someone believes gentle exercise alone will save their mobility. Physical therapy clinics, walking shoe manufacturers, and pharmaceutical companies selling pain medications all benefit when people discover too late that their hips have weakened past the point of conservative treatment. Authority establishment. A groundbreaking study from Harvard Medical School followed 2,300 adults over 65 for 12 years and discovered something that shocked the orthopedic community. Those who relied solely on walking and gentle stretching showed hip deterioration rates 73% higher than those who performed specific strengthening exercises targeting the hip stabilizers. Researchers at the Mayo Clinic used advanced MRI imaging to measure muscle density in the gluteus medius and found that this critical hip stabilizer loses 48% of its mass between ages 60 and 80 in sedentary adults. In the narrator's clinical practice spanning over 2 decades, patterns emerge with absolute clarity. The narrator can predict with 90% accuracy which patients will need hip replacement within 5 years simply by testing their single leg balance and hip abduction strength. Here is the biological reality that most people do not understand. The hip joint is not a simple hinge like the elbow. It is a ball and socket joint that relies on 16 different muscles working in precise coordination to maintain stability and proper alignment. When the smaller stabilizing muscles weaken, which happens first and fastest with age, the larger muscles cannot compensate. This creates abnormal wear patterns on the cartilage, and once cartilage damage begins, it accelerates in a cascading pattern. In this video, the narrator will reveal 5 specific movements that preserve hip strength and mobility, ranked from helpful to absolutely critical. Stick around because number 2 activates a regenerative response that researchers at Stanford University are calling muscle stem cell reactivation. Engagement prompt 1. Before diving into these 5 exercises, the narrator has a question. How old are viewers right now, and where are they watching from? Drop age and location in the comments because the narrator personally reads every single response, and viewer experiences help other seniors understand they are not alone in facing these challenges. And success, fear activation. Viewers have probably noticed subtle changes already. Getting out of the car requires more effort than it used to. That slight limp after sitting for an hour that takes a few steps to walk off. The stiffness in the morning that lasts longer each year. These are not normal aging. These are warning signs that hip stabilizers are weakening. What most people do not realize is how rapidly this decline accelerates once it begins. After age 65, adults lose approximately 3.7% of hip muscle mass every single year without targeted intervention. That means in just 10 years, over 1/3 of the muscular support protecting the hip joint has vanished. The femoral head, which is the ball part of the hip joint, weighs roughly 250 pounds of pressure with each step during normal walking. When the stabilizing muscles weaken, that force distributes unevenly across the cartilage surface. Instead of spreading across the entire joint, the pressure concentrates on small areas, accelerating cartilage breakdown by a factor of 4, according to biomechanical studies from the Cleveland Clinic. Here is where the independent stakes become brutally real. When hip strength drops below a critical threshold, everyday activities become impossible without assistance or modification. Standing on one leg to put on pants turns into a balance challenge requiring furniture support. Getting in and out of a bathtub becomes dangerous enough that many seniors stop bathing independently. Bending down to tie shoes creates such strain that people switch to slip-on footwear permanently. The narrator has operated on countless patients who describe the exact moment they realized their independence was slipping away. It often happens during a grandchild's birthday party when they cannot get down on the floor to play, or during a vacation when they cannot keep up with their spouse on a simple walking tour. The mortality connection is what shocks people most when they learn the statistics. Adults over 70 who undergo hip replacement surgery have a mortality rate within the first year that is 41% higher than age-matched peers who never need the surgery. Why does this happen? The surgery itself triggers inflammatory responses throughout the body. The required immobility during recovery causes rapid muscle loss across the entire body, not just the hip. Blood clots, infections, and complications from anesthesia create cascading health risks. More than 22% of hip replacement patients never return to their pre-surgery activity levels, beginning a downward spiral of declining function. A study published in the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery tracked outcomes over 10 years and found that hip replacement often marks the beginning of permanent functional decline rather than a return to normal life. Countdown. Exercise. 5. Number 5 might seem almost too simple when viewers first hear it, but what it does inside the body at the cellular level will astound them. This exercise is called the standing hip abduction, and it targets the gluteus medius muscle that weakens first and fastest as people age. Researchers at the University of Pittsburgh studied cadavers and found that the gluteus medius shows visible atrophy starting as early as age 55, a full decade before people notice any symptoms. This muscle sits on the outside of the hip and performs one critical function that keeps people walking with normal gait patterns. It prevents the pelvis from dropping when standing on one leg. When someone walks, they are actually balancing on one leg with each step. If the gluteus medius weakens, the pelvis drops toward the unsupported side with every step, creating a distinctive waddle that biomechanics experts call Trendelenburg gait. This abnormal movement pattern accelerates hip joint degeneration because it changes the angle at which the femoral head contacts the socket. A study from Johns Hopkins found that people with weak hip abductors show cartilage breakdown rates 3 times faster than those with normal strength. The narrator treated a patient named Dorothy, 72 years old and a retired librarian, who noticed her daughter kept asking if her hip hurt when they walked together. Dorothy insisted she felt fine, but her daughter noticed the telltale hip drop with each step. Dorothy started performing standing hip abductions daily, and within 6 weeks, her gait pattern normalized completely. Her daughter stopped asking about pain because the visual limp had disappeared. Here is exactly how to perform standing hip abductions correctly. Stand next to a sturdy counter or table and place the hand closest to it on the surface for light balance support only, not to hold body weight. Feet should be hip-width apart with toes pointing straight forward. Shift weight onto the leg closest to the counter, keeping that knee very slightly bent, never locked. Now, lift the outside leg directly out to the side, leading with the heel and keeping the toe pointed forward, not turning the foot outward. The movement should be controlled and slow, taking 2 full seconds to lift the leg out to the side until it reaches approximately 30 degrees from vertical, which is about the width of a large book. Hold this position for 1 second, feeling the muscle on the outside of the standing hip working hard to keep the pelvis level. Then lower the leg back down in a controlled motion, taking another 2 seconds. The common mistake people make is leaning the torso away from the lifting leg, which defeats the entire purpose by using the trunk muscles instead of the hip. The torso must stay vertical throughout the entire movement. Start with 2 sets of 12 repetitions on each leg, performing this exercise every other day. When this becomes comfortable after 2 weeks, progress to 3 sets of 15 repetitions. The goal is building muscular endurance in the gluteus medius, not maximum strength, so higher repetitions with proper form matter more than adding resistance too quickly. But while standing hip abductions rebuild the critical stabilizer that weakens first, the next exercise addresses the muscle group that research shows determines whether someone will need a walker by age 80. Mid-video engagement prompt before revealing number 4. If viewers are finding this information valuable and eye-opening, show support by hitting the like button right now. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so YouTube alerts when new videos are posted with strategies that could literally add years of independent mobility. Countdown. Exercise 4. Number 4 targets a muscle chain that most people have never heard of, but it is the difference between walking confidently and shuffling cautiously with a cane. This exercise is the seated hip march, and it activates the iliopsoas muscle group deep inside the pelvis. The iliopsoas consists of 2 muscles, the iliacus and the psoas major, that attach from the lower spine and pelvis down to the inner thigh bone. These muscles lift the knee toward the chest, which is the motion required for every single step during walking. Research from the American College of Sports Medicine found that iliopsoas strength declines by 54% between ages 60 and 80, which is faster than almost any other muscle group in the body. When these muscles weaken, people develop what is called a shuffling gait, where the feet barely lift off the ground. This shuffling dramatically increases fall risk because the toes catch on rugs, uneven pavement, or small obstacles that a normal gait would clear easily. The narrator recalls a patient named Robert, 76 years old and a retired postal worker who came in after falling 3 times in 2 months. His wife insisted he use a cane, which he hated because he said it made him feel old. The narrator tested his hip flexor strength and found he could barely lift his knee against the resistance of one hand. Robert committed to seated hip marches 3 times daily. Within 8 weeks, his gait normalized so completely that he put the cane in the garage and has not touched it in over a year. Here is the precise method for performing seated hip marches. Sit in a firm chair with feet flat on the floor and knees bent at 90 degrees. The back should be straight, not slumped, and hands can rest lightly on the armrests or thighs, but do not use them to assist the movement. Focus on one leg at a time. Lift the right knee directly upward toward the chest, using only the hip muscles, keeping the foot relaxed and the back straight. The goal is to lift the knee at least 4 inches off the chair seat, which creates enough resistance to strengthen the iliopsoas effectively. Hold the knee at the top position for 2 full seconds, really squeezing the hip flexor muscle. Then lower the foot back down in a controlled motion, taking 2 seconds. Immediately repeat with the left leg. The critical mistake people make is rocking the torso backward to help lift the knee. This must be avoided at all costs because it shifts the work away from the hip flexors. The back stays absolutely vertical throughout. Another common error is pointing the toe during the lift, which recruits the quadriceps instead of isolating the hip flexor. The foot should stay completely relaxed in a neutral position. Perform 3 sets of 15 repetitions on each leg, alternating legs with each repetition. This exercise can be done multiple times throughout the day since it requires no equipment and can be performed while watching television or reading. The cumulative effect of frequent practice throughout the day actually produces better results than one long session because it prevents the muscle fatigue that reduces form quality. If number 4 seems simple, prepare for number 3 because it uses a principle that physical therapists charge $200 per session to teach, but viewers are getting it free right now. Countdown exercise 3. The number 3 exercise is called the bridge hold, and it targets the gluteus maximus, which is the largest muscle in the entire human body. This muscle extends the hip, which means it pushes the thigh backward. People use this motion when standing up from a chair, climbing stairs, and walking uphill. More importantly, the gluteus maximus works with the hamstrings to stabilize the pelvis during walking and prevent forward rotation that strains the lower back. A study from Stanford University School of Medicine used electrical sensors to measure muscle activation during daily activities and found something remarkable. The gluteus maximus in the average 70-year-old activates at only 32% of its potential capacity during normal walking. This means people are walking around using less than 1/3 of their largest muscle, forcing smaller muscles to compensate and creating the chronic hip and back pain that millions assume is inevitable with aging. Here's the mechanism that makes the bridge hold so powerful. When someone lies on their back and lifts their hips off the ground, the gluteus maximus must contract isometrically, meaning the muscle tenses without changing length. This isometric contraction creates a unique cellular environment that triggers satellite cell activation. Satellite cells are muscle stem cells that remain dormant until specific stimuli wake them up. Research published in the Journal of Applied Physiology found that isometric contractions lasting 30 seconds or longer cause satellite cell proliferation rates to increase by 183% compared to baseline. This means the muscle is not just getting stronger, it is actually rebuilding itself at the cellular level. The narrator worked with a patient named Helen, 69 years old and a former nurse, who could not climb the stairs in her 2-story home without stopping twice to rest. She had considered selling her house and moving to a single-level condo. Helen started doing bridge holds daily, and within 10 weeks she climbed her stairs without stopping, without pain, and without the fear that had been controlling her housing decisions. Here are the exact steps for performing a bridge hold correctly. Lie on the back on a firm surface like a carpet or exercise mat, never on a soft bed. Knees should be bent with feet flat on the floor, positioned about hip width apart and roughly 12 inches away from the buttocks. Arms rest at the sides with palms facing down for stability. Press down through the heels, squeeze the buttocks muscles hard, and lift the hips off the ground. Continue lifting until the body forms a straight diagonal line from the knees through the hips to the shoulders. The common mistake is lifting too high, creating an arch in the lower back. This must be avoided. The line should be straight, not curved. Hold this top position for 30 full seconds, breathing normally throughout. Do not hold the breath because that increases blood pressure unnecessarily. After 30 seconds, lower the hips back down in a controlled motion, taking 3 seconds. Rest for 15 seconds, then repeat. Complete 4 repetitions total, holding each one for 30 seconds. The critical technique point is keeping the core engaged throughout the hold. This means pulling the belly button slightly toward the spine, which prevents the lower back from arching. Another key detail is weight distribution. The weight should be on the heels and upper back, never on the neck. If someone feels pressure in the neck, the hips are lifted too high. Progress this exercise by extending the hold time. After 2 weeks, increase to 45-second holds. After 4 weeks, progress to 60-second holds. When 60 seconds becomes manageable, add a single leg variation by extending one leg straight while holding the bridge position. This variation creates over twice the resistance and accelerates strength gains dramatically. While the bridge hold builds the powerhouse muscle that enables all hip extension movements, the next exercise addresses something even more critical that determines whether someone will still be living independently at age 85. Second engagement prompt. Pause for just a moment and share in the comments which of these exercises viewers are going to try first. The narrator genuinely wants to know because viewer engagement and experiences help shape future videos and help other seniors feel motivated to start their own routines. Countdown. Exercise 2. Number 2 has effects so powerful that major hospital systems in Sweden and Germany have incorporated it into their fall prevention protocols, reducing hip fracture rates by 39% according to a meta-analysis published in The Lancet. This exercise is the single leg stance, and it develops the one physical capability that research shows is the strongest predictor of longevity after age 65. A study from the University of Bristol followed 13,000 adults for 13 years and found that the inability to stand on one leg for 10 seconds was associated with an 84% increase in all-cause mortality over the next decade. The reason single-leg balance is so predictive becomes clear when understanding what it actually measures. Standing on one leg requires simultaneous coordination of 27 different muscles spanning from the foot through the hip. It demands proprioception, which is the body's awareness of its position in space. It tests vestibular function, which is the inner ear balance system. It challenges the visual system to integrate spatial information. When any of these systems declines, single-leg balance deteriorates first, often years before people notice symptoms in daily life. More importantly, single-leg balance training has been proven to strengthen all of these systems simultaneously. Researchers at the Mayo Clinic found that adults who practiced single-leg balance exercises for just 3 minutes daily showed proprioceptive improvements equivalent to people 20 years younger after only 8 weeks. The improved balance translated directly into 46% fewer falls over the following year compared to a control group that did not train balance. The narrator treated a patient named Frank, 81 years old and a retired engineer, after he fell in his garage and broke his wrist. Frank was terrified of falling again and had started avoiding activities he loved, including his woodworking hobby, because he feared another fall. The narrator tested his balance and found he could not stand on one leg for even 2 seconds. Frank practiced single-leg stance religiously, starting with heavy support and gradually reducing it. 6 months later, Frank could stand on one leg for over 20 seconds with just fingertip contact for safety. His confidence returned, his woodworking projects resumed, and he has not fallen again. Here's exactly how to safely practice single-leg stance with a progression system that works for any current ability level. Stand next to a kitchen counter or sturdy table with both feet hip-width apart. Place both hands on the counter surface for full support initially. Shift weight onto the right leg and lift the left foot just 1 inch off the ground, keeping the knees slightly bent. Hold this position for 10 seconds while maintaining 2-hand support on the counter. Lower the foot back down, then repeat on the opposite leg. Complete 3 repetitions on each leg. This is the starting level for anyone who feels unsteady or has fallen within the past year. Once this becomes comfortable, progress to the next level by using just one hand on the counter for support. Then progress to fingertip-only contact. Then try hovering the hand near the counter without touching but ready to grab if needed. Finally, progress to completely unsupported single-leg stance. The ultimate goal is to stand on each leg for 30 seconds without any support and without the standing hip shifting outward or the torso leaning to compensate. This level of balance provides protection against falls that most people in their 60s and 70s have never experienced. Practice this exercise twice daily, once in the morning and once in the evening, for 3 minutes total. The neurological adaptations that improve balance require frequent stimulus throughout the day rather than one long training session. Another powerful variation is practicing with eyes closed once unsupported balance becomes solid, because this removes visual input and forces the proprioceptive and vestibular systems to work harder. Now, prepare for number 1, because this exercise has the single most comprehensive impact on hip health, combining strength, mobility, and motor control in one movement that takes only 90 seconds to perform but delivers benefits that researchers are calling the fountain of youth for aging hips. Countdown Exercise 1. The number one exercise that the narrator recommends to virtually every patient over 65 is the sit-to-stand squat, and here is why it is ranked as the most critical movement for hip health. This exercise directly trains the exact movement pattern that determines whether someone will maintain independence into their 80s and 90s. The ability to stand up from a chair without using hands to push off is what geriatric researchers call a functional threshold. Once someone loses this ability, their independence effectively ends because almost every daily activity becomes compromised. Research from the National Institute on Aging found that the sit-to-stand movement requires more coordinated muscle activation across more joints than any other common daily activity, including walking, climbing stairs, or bending to pick things up. It demands hip extension strength from the gluteus maximus, hip abduction stability from the gluteus medius, knee extension power from the quadriceps, ankle mobility for proper weight distribution, and core stability to maintain balance throughout the movement. A single repetition of sit-to-stand performed correctly provides more comprehensive lower body strengthening than 10 minutes of walking. The cellular benefits go deeper than just strength. A study published in Cell Metabolism examined muscle biopsies from adults over 70 who performed sit-to-stand exercises 3 times weekly for 12 weeks. The researchers found increased mitochondrial density in the muscle cells, meaning the power plants that produce energy within each cell multiplied and became more efficient. Genetic markers associated with aging showed reversal patterns, with several inflammatory markers decreasing by 47%. The participants literally showed biological age reversal in their muscle tissue. The narrator worked with a patient named Barbara, 74 years old and a retired accountant, who had stopped attending her book club because the low chairs in the meeting room had become impossible to get out of without help. This embarrassment had isolated her socially and contributed to depression that her family noticed but did not understand. Barbara started practicing sit-to-stand squats daily, and within 7 weeks she attended her book club again, stood up from those low chairs independently, and her daughter later told the narrator that she had her mother back. Here is the precise method for performing sit-to-stand squats correctly with a progression system for all ability levels. Start by choosing a firm chair with a seat height that allows the knees to bend at 90 degrees when sitting with feet flat on the floor. Sit at the front edge of the chair with feet hip-width apart and toes pointing forward. Cross arms over the chest to prevent using hands for assistance, or if balance is a concern, extend arms forward for counterbalance. The movement begins by leaning the torso forward approximately 30 degrees, which shifts the center of mass over the feet. This forward lean is absolutely critical because without it, the legs cannot generate enough force to lift the body. From this lean position, press down through the heels and stand up in one smooth motion using the hip and leg muscles. At the top of the standing position, squeeze the buttocks muscles for 1 second. Then slowly sit back down, taking 3 full seconds to lower, maintaining control throughout the descent rather than dropping into the chair. The common mistakes that must be avoided are standing up too quickly without the forward lean, which makes the movement harder and less effective, allowing the knees to cave inward during the stand, which stresses the knee joints, and using momentum to rock forward instead of muscular force to stand, which defeats the strengthening purpose. Start with 2 sets of 8 repetitions, resting 1 minute between sets. Perform this exercise every other day. When 8 repetitions become easy, progress to 12 repetitions. When 12 repetitions feel comfortable, make the exercise harder by using a slightly lower chair or holding a light weight against the chest. The ultimate progression is the pistol squat performed without a chair, but very few adults over 70 need to progress to that level to maintain excellent functional independence. Comprehensive recap and final call to action. The 5 exercises revealed today represent a complete hip preservation system that requires no gym membership, no expensive equipment, and less than 20 minutes daily. These movements target the exact muscle groups and movement patterns that research has proven determine whether someone will thrive independently or decline into dependency. The standing hip abduction rebuilds the gluteus medius stabilizer that weakens first. The seated hip march strengthens the deep iliopsoas that prevents shuffling gait. The bridge hold activates the powerful gluteus maximus and triggers cellular regeneration.